My name is Sarah Forbes and I'm the curator of the Museum of Sex here in New York City. And I'm about to give you a tour of our exhibition Rubbers, the life, history and struggle of the condom. This section right here is the condom, a history of invention. And in this part of the exhibition we're talking about all of the materials that have been used to create condoms, from linen sheets to fish bladders to animal intestines to all various grades of rubbers as the technology has progressed. So some of the first condoms were as thick as bicycle tires with actual seams along the edges.
Jeez.
They smelled like sulfur because that was used in the treatment of them, and they were actually meant to be used over and over and over again. So we have come a very long way in the history and invention of condoms to now, what we know of latex condoms, polyurethane condoms. Condoms are also sold in these metal tins, which today are now collector's items.
Yeah.
To these envelopes, packaging that kind of progresses in the 1960s and 70s.
Now, how did you assemble all these old packages?
Well, the museum does have a permanent collection. We have over 15,000 artifacts.
Wow.
We have a media library, a traditional library that researchers can come and use the material that we have. But also it's just kind of, with every exhibition you make, there's this constant amount of research to find the collections, to find the objects, to find the people who have these particular items and bring them on display for the public. Also, the way that condoms were dispensed. So originally, condoms were a very underground business. So you'd go and get them from a bartender, from a brothel owner, and then eventually they became a regulated industry. Obviously, the quality of a condom is a very important thing. So when they did end up in pharmacies, this is an early display case, they had these modesty doors. So if a woman or a child came in, they wouldn't be exposed to the sexual content, and then becoming this really anonymous experience in this bathroom. You don't have to have a conversation with somebody to get the condoms to have safer sex.
Why did some of these say artifact removed?
Well, we extended this exhibition.
Oh, I see.
So some of these were on loan to us from various institutions. So they have recently been removed to be sent back to the people that were kind enough to lend them to us.
Gotcha. That's funny. Halo condom.
So of course, in doing an exhibition on condoms, we're going to talk about the disease portion of why condoms have come into use. And condoms really became very popular in the 1400s, late 1400s, with the arrival of syphilis, because you would pass it along to your partner, you'd pass it along to your children, and there was no cure. And very much in talking about syphilis, comparing it to HIV/AIDS and how it's transformed society today, as well as, unfortunately, since 2001, the rate of syphilis has actually been on the increase. So this is not even something that's from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It's something that we are contending with today. Just a couple of images to get across to people. I always say you don't need too many anchor photos to get across what syphilis did and how it absolutely transformed society. Even leftover ideas of having to get a blood test before getting married are actually this leftover history in regards to syphilis. Various discussions about race and disease. This is a very dark moment in our American history with the Tuskegee study, which it was about 600 African American men were involved in the study from 1932 to 1972, and even once there was antibiotics to cure syphilis, to treat syphilis I should say, these men were not given treatment. And so this is one of those horrific moments that our US government and under President Clinton had to make apology for, and there were financial reparations to the people affected. So with the military, having a conversation about morality, the US government did not want to give the troops condoms. And until World War II, they would only give them a Pro Kit. And the Pro Kit is basically glorified soap in a tissue, which was not at all effective in being a prophylactic. And during World War I, over 18,000 men a day were not serving because of, at the time, what they called VD. There's a huge percentage of our troops that are not fighting a cause because of sexually associated illnesses. So by World War II, we finally gave them condoms and we started to educate them. We made films, but the Army also made these brochures that are completely a snapshot of a particular time, saying things, stay away from the loose women and whores. And this is, you know, the official literature for that time period. You know, quick educational, there's some 3D glasses. You can see the virons brought to life.
Ah! HPV, HIV, syphilis, and herpes.
Yeah, just really to understand what these things are on a visual level, and then here with the information on how they're spread, how they can be prevented, how they can be treated. Of course, in doing an exhibition on condoms, we have to talk about the controversial components. The religious, the political, also the fact that condoms are not required within the porn industry. So this is Shishi LaRue speaking. Shishi LaRue will only use condoms, only make films that have condoms associated. Also talking about contraception, but also with all of the many heavy conversations that we're having here, also talking about art. All of these sculptures were made by Randy Palumbo, so he's using condoms to mold off of, actually using the condoms, you know, woven into the actual art pieces themselves. This piece right here is on loan from the Folk Art Museum here in New York. It's called Baby Blanket. And so condoms have made their way into many different art pieces. From more pieces from Randy Palumbo. These are pieces on loan from Masumi Teraoka, who created these early 1990s. Two artists, you know, such as Keith Haring. These are on loan from the Keith Haring Foundation. And of course, you know, Keith Haring is this, you know, tremendously influential New York-based artist that was extraordinarily pro-sex, but was also very much about promoting a safer sex message. He unfortunately passed away from HIV/AIDS-related complications, but he's one of these artists who used his art to propel a message further about safer sex.
What is the demographic that typically comes to the sex museum?
Well, as a museum of sex, we're an 18+ institution because some of our content is pornographic, and so we do have to follow the kind of the age regulations on that. Then when we say, you know, 18 to 80, it's everyone. It's maybe even slightly more female than male. You have a very strong 18 to 35, but I've given tours to a group of 80-year-old women who are probably my favorite groups to tour. They kind of push you out of the way, and they're so eager to have a conversation because maybe in their generation they weren't able to. This is a dress made out of over 5,000 hand-dyed, hand-cut condoms, and it is a replica of a Valentino bubble dress from the 1960s. So it's a Brazilian artist, Adriana Bertini. She's made many of these couture gowns. They've shown at the UN, they've shown all over the world. And she also runs courses with women where she shows them how she prepares these, how she makes these, and with the underlying theory that if you're, touching condoms in another sense when it comes to that moment, for sexual content, you'll be much more inclined to use it because the taboo has been erased. So not only is she making art pieces, but she's contributing to a dialogue about safer sex. Many kind of educational moments, a film from the American Social Health Association that is just image-based to teach people how to put on condoms, how to take off condoms. Right here, there's models for teaching people how to deal with condoms, also female condoms. And then this section talking about politics of orientation, politics of gender.
Have you ever caught anybody having sex here?
No, I think people, they want things to be, people always ask, oh, are you protested all the time? Are you the most, we're a museum. We talk about sex unabashedly, without censorship, which is a wonderful thing to be. But, our patrons are actually very respectful and come here and see that we're being a resource and that we're creating content that no other institution really is. We welcome people to come and see what we are, and I think there's a lot of erotic museums around the world, and we really view that we're doing something totally different. We're really having an intelligent conversation about sex. We're showing people items that sometimes they're familiar with and sometimes they've never been exposed to. And so, when you make the decision to cross the threshold of the museum, you're interested in having that conversation, and that's what we ultimately want is that the more people are talking about sex, they're learning about sex, they continue that conversation elsewhere beyond the walls of the museum.
How long has this been open?
The museum has been open since 2002.
And were you here at the start of it?
Well, we just celebrated our 8th anniversary, and I've been with the museum for a little over 6 years. So almost from the beginning, seeing it grow and expand and really become this much more well-known cultural institution here in New York.
Was it, I guess, what was the inspiration for starting the museum?
Well, our founder, a man named Daniel Gluck, he was at a bar with his friends, and the conversation came up, and they were like, why isn't there a museum of sex? And he had some relationship with Camille Paglia, who he's incredibly inspired by. And it got word, and it just grew and grew and grew, and so many people wanted to have a serious institution that was dedicated to the subject of sex and sexuality. And so from one night at a bar to now this large cultural institution with so many artists and academics in support of us, communities in support of us, it's come a long way.
And how did you wind up getting a curatorial role? Is your background in sex studies or in curation?
Well, I went to grad school for anthropology with a focus on gender. So it was actually a very natural transition to being here at the museum. So I get to use all of my theory and work with the arts and with design to create content that's enjoyable and entertaining and educational for our public.
About how long do your exhibits run for?
Well, we have larger thematic exhibitions that can run about 6 months, and then we try and bring something new. We also have other galleries where we can change out smaller parts, so we can focus on an individual artist for a few months at a time, and to talk about various themes. Because sex is such a huge topic, to try and cover everything from across time and across the world is very difficult in 4 or 5 galleries.
In general, how much preparation goes into putting together an exhibit? And I guess sort of walk us through the process of that. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, most museums are kind of slower moving institutions, and thankfully we are able to move at a much more rapid pace. So ideally, I'd love to have at least a year to make an exhibition, because it requires a huge amount of research and reach out to people who have collections, who are themselves artists, who are themselves experts in very particular fields, and then working with the designers to come up with the look and the feel and the best way to get a huge amount of information to people without them being overloaded. So it's a mixture of research, exhibition design, and actually finding the objects that we're going to highlight.
Is there any specific focus that you take aside from sort of an intelligent discussion about sex? Is there any specific aspect of sexuality the museum focuses on, or do you cover the entire gamut?
We try and cover it all as much as you can, and for a small institution, but I think that's why we're growing. We just added an additional gallery. Hopefully in the next couple of months we'll be adding even another gallery, or we just opened a cafe. So for the amount of time people are coming, they can have some food. And we brought the education into that. It's an aphrodisiac-oriented cafe, so they can have their drink and learn about why what they're drinking or eating is in itself an aphrodisiac.
I know a lot of museums do stuff outside the museum, have traveling exhibits or go and teach things. Do you do anything like that, or is it all self-contained?
Well, we make lots of exhibitions that we would love to travel to other institutions. It's just what institution can show what we've created, and that's our kind of difficult divide. And I think this exhibition right here, this would be a perfect exhibition to travel, maybe to a university, or unfortunately sometimes people are scared about having unabashed conversations about sex, and so hopefully we're going to propel them towards that. I speak at lots of universities, lectures, and we try and do as much as we can for a small institution.
When you have people coming through, do you have any mechanism for gauging their reactions or talking to people? And what kind of reactions have you gotten?
I think people are just so supportive that there's an institution of this type and that they have this resource. At some points we've done various surveys to get a sense of what people are interested in seeing, what they want to learn more about. And so it's kind of a continually growing process.